Hello, hello. This is Justin Colletti of SonicScoop, and today I am joined by Preston Reid, a mixer known as Prizzie, and he just did a MixCon Masterclass with us. It was very much dope. You should check it out if you haven't already. He goes into great detail into his approach in mixing, opens up a whole track for us, and shows us what he does to vocals, percussion, all sorts of elements. Prizzie, so glad to have you here.
Oh man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. And it's great to have you guys here too. If you're here for the live stream premiere of this, we are doing this Q&A totally live. We're taking your questions. I'm going to lead with some questions of my own and then questions that came in during the premiere of that masterclass. And then we'll be taking your questions live in the chat. So if any questions pop in your head and you're here for the live premiere, just type them straight into the chat and I'll be monitoring it and asking Prizzie the best questions that come in straight away. Before we get into that, big shout out and thanks to the sponsors of MixCon for helping make this free to the public. If you don't know, the masterclass Prizzie did and this interview is part of MixCon. It's our annual convention that's all about music mixing. And we are giving away, as part of MixCon, $10,000 worth of free gear, and there are 3 chances to win that free gear. Go check it out at mix-con.com. That's mix-con.com, where you can enter for your chance to win $10,000 worth of free gear. And there are 3 chances to win. We're giving away speakers, we're giving away headphones, really nice headphones from Odyssey, and we're giving away plugins, including some Waves plugins. And one quick shout out and thanks to Waves. They were the reason that Prizzie's masterclass was free to the public. They were the marquee sponsor on that one, and as a natural fit because Prizzie's been using their plugins forever. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff today, but out of respect and honor to Waves, whose stuff I've been using, it's probably since about the year 2000. I love their stuff. I know Prizzie does too. He's been using their
Oh
stuff
yeah,
the whole career. I want to
yeah.
ask Prizzie, first question, what are your favorite Waves plugins and why?
So I gotta first of all give a shout out to the OG RVox. Some people call it RVox, but I
Mm-hmm.
like RVox. It's my thing.
Yeah.
Uh, that's probably on just about every mix. Also, I usually like to parallel the CLA 76, and that's
Yes.
something I've been doing for at least 10 years. So that's always going to be a part of my sound. And then I actually like the new L4. It's kind of nice. I've been
Mm.
messing with it a little bit, but it's pretty nice on certain elements for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the multi-band ultra maximizer, right? The L2 was the one that was super duper famous for so long. It's still being used today. And the L4, yeah, more recent one. I think is that the multi-band version of like the L2 kind of?
Well, the L4, I think it's pretty much the L2 with a bunch of new features.
Oh, okay. Maybe
It's
I'm getting confused with the
brand new.
L3. They had
Yeah, they have
originally
the
an
L3
L1,
as
which is
well.
again is still out there. They've man,
Yeah.
I got to say the first time I ever used Waves plugins was the year 2000, and I want to say that when I look at masterclass after masterclass, because we do at least a half dozen of these every year, going under the hood
Yeah.
of major mixer stuff. Probably 2 of the most common plugin compressors I see are Arvox and the CLA 76. I mean, they're
Can't
bananas. To
lose.
tell you the truth, I use the CLA 76 on a whole bunch of tracks when we're doing like video stuff and I have to level voices, I'll use it because it just
Yeah.
naturally sounds good when you're doing a ton of compression. All
It
right,
just
away
works.
from the compression front of things, you got Arvox and CLA 76 as being 2 of your top ones. Anything that's more effecty that you're a big fan of?
H delay, you can't go wrong. I think that saved my life as a tracking engineer for years because you can dial something in pretty much in real time with the artist in the booth with the headphones on. That's how fast it works. Um, our verb, honorable
Mm-hmm.
mention for sure. And even in CLA vocals, the
Yeah.
spreader and you know, those type of effects too. Those are super useful.
Yeah, that one's like kind of a one-stop shop one where there's EQ. And one of the things I like about the CLA effects is one of these things where you don't get like numerically obsessed. It is
Yeah,
moving faders until it sounds right rather than,
literally.
getting super granular. And sometimes that leads to better mixing. And last
Yeah.
question I've got to ask you around this front on favorite Waves plugins is some of the more modern ones. In the past several years, they've been doing more stuff that has like machine learning and machine intelligence
hmm
and stuff. Are there any, few things that have come out in the past few years that have stood out to you as being especially interesting from those guys?
Yeah. So there's one for sure for which I don't know if it gets enough shine, but it's called IDX.
Ah,
And
yeah, the intelligent dynamics.
yeah, that one's pretty cool, especially on like an unruly bass or synth bass or something like that.
Mhm.
It kind of just gets you what you want really quickly. Yeah, that one's a hidden gem for sure.
Sweet. All right. Well, big shout out again, and thanks to those guys. You used a whole bunch of effects that I used a lot back in my mixing days. I'm mostly mastering now, but I saw you bring out Doubler, which I was, man, I would use that thing all the time. And
Yeah.
I'm not surprised people are still using today. I saw you using their stereo spreader and their stereo imaging, which I think are
Oh
great
yeah.
tools. And yeah, I think I saw you use every single one of the Renaissance plugins, and they're classics
Yep.
for a reason. All right.
Yep.
The question I want to lead off with for you, Prizzie, is you've done a bunch of stuff in the R&B domain, bunch of stuff in the hip hop domain. You've also done stuff that I think we could consider kind of pop. Can you give me a sense when it comes to R&B and hip hop? What are the big differences in mixing aesthetic? Assuming that a lot of people who work on hip hop are going to work on some R&B and vice versa, what are the things they have to
Yeah.
get straight to know about the norms of each genre so that they're approaching each one correctly?
Yeah. So first of all, with mixing, I try to. I guess I've always visualized mixes. Um, so I mean,
Mhm.
maybe you can call it synesthesia, or whatever the word for it is. But
Sure.
when I think of a mix visually, it's kind of convex versus concave. Hip hop mixes are
Hmm.
more center focused. You want the drums, the bass, the vocal to be, the star of the show. In
Hmm.
R&B, the vocal is everything. Now, the
Hmm.
drums are still very much a priority, but not quite as much as the vocal, especially the lead vocal in particular. And background vocals are very, very important.
Yeah.
Um, in pop or something that's a little more pop leaning, you really want to have the whole stereo field manipulated. You want to everything that's wide, everything that is supposed to live in the stereo field, you want it to be heard and loud and proud. Um, so it's really just a different point of focus. A lot of these songs you realize have like the exact same elements. Like if you pull up the session, you probably see the exact same drum sounds half of the
Mhm.
time. It's just how they're used is slightly different.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, cool. I get what you're saying about the center focus, particularly in hip hop records. And yeah, just also, I feel like there's maybe a different balance, I think, on average between like kick and bass, maybe in hip hop compared to R&B. It depends on the track because there's so many different ways for kick and bass to sit within hip hop. But I feel like broad strokes, maybe hip hop tends to be on a little bit more kick focus on average, where R&B tends to maybe be a bit more bass focus on average. Do you think that's true, or do you think I'm overgeneralizing here?
No, I think there's some truth to it because you got to think about what you want to feel when you're listening to it.
Hmm.
With hip hop, a big like heavy pointy kick or even just a big like fat kick that it has a certain energy of
Mm,
aggression. But in R&B, it's kind of fundamentally opposite because you want it to be smooth and create a vibe. So if you have a heavy kick that's like punching you in the chest, it might
mhm,
give you a different feeling. But a smooth bass line, even if it's deep and a loud bass, if it's
mhm.
smooth, it still is in line with the record being smooth, especially if everything else is still heard and felt.
Right. And I would imagine there's, speaking of smooth versus not smooth, or just saturation and grit on more elements, maybe being more of a thing in hip hop. That said, I feel like on everything these days, especially when things are recorded digitally, people are adding saturation, ways of getting color. But I would imagine getting things hairier and dirtier is a bigger part of hip hop. If you're going to add saturation to an R&B record, what are the places that you might add saturation or dirtying to on a R&B record compared to what might be added in a hip hop record?
Hmm. All right, hot take. I would say
Okay.
background vocals on an R&B record.
Mm-hmm.
I saturate the crap out of background vocals.
All right.
Um, that's just what I love to do because I don't know, I guess I grew up listening to like Motown and stuff like that to
Mm-hmm.
where Diana Ross was important, but the
Mm-hmm.
Supremes were also important.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really let one dominate the other. They both had to live in the same space.
Yeah.
So saturating kind of background elements are really important to me. Of course, you
Yeah.
have drums. There's always a sense of saturation with that, but it depends on the song, and it also just depends on the rough. It depends on what they give you, because sometimes you
Totally.
can overdo it, and the drums kind of become the star of the show in a song that's not really the point.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a Motown nerd myself, and I would say one of the things that makes Motown for me is James Jamerson. Like they gave that man had melodies for bass lines. It was absolutely insane. Like almost counterpoint, where you have like the lead vocal melody, and then buried under there for people who had actual stereo systems, there'd be a sub melody on the bass. And I'm a kind of a 60s Motown guy because things sound a little hairier, a little bit more saturated. And then,
Yeah,
as they get into the 70s, things get cleaned up and prettied out and they widen. But I'm a sucker for
yeah.
that low fidelity 60s Motown where they
That
just
Altec
did
Lansing
everything they
sound.
could.
Yeah,
Good stuff, man. All right, I want to start getting into some of the audience questions, so it's not just me. Eric Kokamanian, I think that's how I say it. He says, regarding the shortcut where he lowered the volume of the S's, he was able to bring up a black line on the waveform of the vocals. I think this is Eric for the first time discovering that in Pro Tools, not only do we have clip gain, but there's now a clip gain line for the past several years. It's been out for a little
hmm
while, but there's a clip gain line in there that you can adjust. Can you tell us, first of all, how you bring up that clip gain line for people who are in Pro Tools, and then this might speak to people who are using other DAWs as well. The idea of clip gain is turning the volume up and down at the waveform level before it even hits your plugins, before it hits your fader. What do you use
yeah,
that concept of clip gain for? What's it most helpful for you on?
yeah. So I came up under producers, Tricky Stewart, and a lot of people that have a more organic approach. So less is truly more. So I'm really of the belief that most problems you can fix in the edit window before you have to
Mm,
start throwing plugins on and stuff like that. So
mm,
if you have a sibilant S
mhm,
in Pro Tools, I would prefer to just draw it down as your first line of defense. That way, it's less problems downstream and it's less fixing. It's less. I kind of see plugins and stuff as like soldiers on the front line.
mm,
So if there's not a battle to be had, you don't need a ton of soldiers to fight that battle.
mhm,
Um, in Pro Tools, I think the clip gain line, I think I don't have Pro Tools in front of me, but if you go to the top window on a Mac and you hit maybe view, and it should say something about clips or tracks or something like that, and then you'll see something that says view clip gain line.
yeah.
And then that'll give you that like little black line on each track. And then from there, if you break up the part you want, you could just draw that down with the smart tool. Or the shortcut for that is if you click, let's say you highlight an S, which looks like a
Mhm,
little football as a waveform. You do that, you click it, and then I think if you hold shift, I think control and shift and hit the up and down arrows,
yep.
it'll
And
go
plus and
up and
minus.
down in increments. And plus, I think on default it's like zero point 0.5 dB, but you
Yep.
can change it to be
Can change it.
whatever.
That's
You
right.
can change it to be like 5. So you hit the down button and it just drops down 5 dB.
That's
And then
how
you
I
can also
discovered
do
it. I
some
think I was trying to
multiples.
nudge an audio waveform like backwards or forward, and all of a sudden the line showed up on my screen. Like, what is that thing? And I think that's how
Yeah,
I first learned about it. Was totally by accident. Um,
yeah.
but I remember I took the Pro Tools, man, what do they call it? The Pro Tools certification course like ages ago, and they literally go through
hmm
like every single window in Pro Tools, and they show you what everything does. So if you want to be a total Pro Tools nerd, you can take the
Yeah,
certification course. I don't think you need to make good mixes. It's just like if you want to
yeah,
be a nerd who knows like where everything is, you can do that. But otherwise, yeah, find out things by accident or by watching MixCon videos. So thanks for sharing that tip. You totally
yeah,
blew Eric's mind that you could do that. And who knows how many years it's been in Pro Tools now, but there's still users
for
who
sure.
don't know about it. All right,
Oh, yeah.
Scott writes in to say, I can't remember everything that Prizzie did in regard to the vocal, but does he usually do EQ before or after compression on the vocal or the other way around? Any thoughts about that, particularly on vocal or in general, EQ into compression or vice versa?
Okay, so just off the top of my head, what I would do in theory, I would try to cut any problems first.
Mhm.
So if we have like low end rumble in a vocal, let's say you recorded it in a apartment next to a AC or something, you're gonna have some hum. There's gonna be, or if you're by a refrigerator in a open Airbnb or something, like you're gonna have low end rumble. Ideally, you don't record with that at all, but if you do, you want to get rid of that so your compressor isn't reacting to just energy, unnecessary energy. So I would compress after that, and then anything additive, like a pull tech, I would put after that,
Yeah.
personally.
Totally. This is the exact same recommendation I make is the things that we don't want triggering the compressor cutting first. And then the things you really want to enhance, we don't want those things triggering the compressor as much. So putting them after. Now that said, always a little bit of one bleeds into the other. And, maybe
hmm
it's hard to completely separate subtractive from additive, but I think you're onto an idea that works for a lot of people for good reason. So
Okay.
let me get into some more audience questions for you here. We have another one from the live premiere. Russ asks, With program material like plug-in instruments, what are you doing there? Are you just adding things like saturation and effects, but not compression? So I guess his question is when it comes to mixes that have more plug-in and sample-based instruments instead of live played instruments, are those sources that you're not compressing, or is there still a reason to compress them? What are your thoughts about treating those types of synthesized instruments and sampled instruments compared to natural instruments?
Yeah, so another hot take. I
Mm-hmm.
don't love compression,
Mm,
um, especially on an instrument level. Vocals, it is what it is. Personally, if I had the time, I would just clip gain the vocal into it being perfectly leveled. But
mm,
having said that, with program instruments, I'm not a fan of adding a problem to a problem.
mm,
So if you give me a synth that is just doing this the whole song,
mm,
unless I'm compressing it for color, I don't feel the need to compress. I
right.
might EQ if I wanted, to sit in a different pocket. Um, Drums, I'll compress if it's really like kind of peaky. Let's say if it's a
Mm,
shaker or a snare or something like that, or a kick drum that's just really, really, really pokey.
right.
Live instruments is different because that's more of a utility. So
Mm,
if you give me a bass guitar that you just recorded through an Apollo DI, okay, I might want to treat that with something that's, a leveling amp like an LA2A or something like that.
mm,
I might be more prone to do that. But something programmed, assuming you're a good producer, I think we're in the age of intentionality. So a lot of times people give you a rough and they have the same tools you have. So if they wanted compression, they would have already given it to you with compression.
yeah. No, I hear you. Fair enough. And I see what you mean about the percussion elements. There, it's more about envelope shaping, right? Where it's less about getting more dynamic control and more changing. Okay, the transient pokes out too much compared to everything else in the record. Let's soften that
Exactly.
transient. Maybe that's what a compressor is for. And then sometimes
Exactly.
compressors can do the opposite. If you have a slow enough tack compressor and there's only a tiny transient, you can then
Yep.
exaggerate the transient. So yeah, you have that
Yep.
ability.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense to me. All right, let's get some questions that are coming in from the live viewers here. Um, I hope I'm saying your name right. Let me give it a chance. Baker Lefdowie. Tell me if I got it right, Baker. Baker says, "What is Prizzie expecting from mastering?" Any thoughts there?
What am I expecting from mastering? It depends on who I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
The, if I'm working with somebody I don't know and I haven't heard any of their work, the best thing you could do is probably nothing. Just leave it alone. Make it slightly louder, maybe EQ some stuff, but get out the way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're already first in goal. Just run the ball up the middle. We're already there. But if it's somebody that I've been working with a lot, let's say Depth, $1 Million Snare, my boy Mike Tucci, could be Joe Laporta, could be Colin Leonard, could be, whoever that I've done good work with. In that case, I'm expecting just a second perspective. Like sometimes between deadlines, between really trying to be I won't say political, but trying to service the client and knowing that the song still has something to be desired. Sometimes it's out of your hands. You may have made concessions throughout the mix. Say you get to version 5 and they really want you to turn up this thing or turn this thing down, and you might disagree with it. When I'm sending it to a mastering engineer I trust, I'm explaining that and hoping they they're the last line of defense to maybe have a happy medium between what I'm hearing and what the artist might be hearing. So it just really depends on who it's going to. But yeah, if you're just sending it to the abyss, the best thing they could do is practically nothing to.
Fair enough. I hear you. Yeah. All right. Uh, and to a degree, yeah, it depends on the level of mixer compared to the level of the mastering engineer. Definitely changes the dynamic for sure. All
Mhm.
right, moving on to other questions. Okay, Bernardo Reyes, he has made it, I think, to like every MixCon Masterclass and every MixCon Q&A for the past few years running, all because
Nice.
he's A, interested in learning, but B, wants to ask every MixCon presenter the same exact question. And this is the question he has asked all of them. I think you're number like 18. And his question is, Prizzie, what is your favorite sandwich?
What is my favorite sandwich?
That's his question.
Uh, Dang, that's a good one. Maybe a grilled cheese. I'm a very simple guy.
Ooh, I like that. Do you ever do grilled cheese with either tomato in it or ham in it, or just straight grilled cheese only?
Tomato for sure. My wife's
Yeah.
Italian, so
All
everything has
right.
tomato.
Congratulations, you lucked out.
Yeah,
Is she,
thanks.
is she someone who cooks too? Is she like an Italian aficionado of
Oh
the
yeah.
cuisine?
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
for sure. We have pasta basically every day. It's my favorite.
Nice. You are a lucky man. All right. Next one here. Lan Thompson says, "How did you get in studios with other mixing engineers to learn from them? I'm a production student currently. What is something I should know to be helpful to pros like yourself?" So I guess this is a two-part question. How do you get into the studio with people who you want to learn from? And then how can you be most helpful to them?
Wow, that is a simple and tough question at the same time. It's a simple
Hmm.
question, but it's a tough answer to that. Um, so I've been in music my whole life. I'm from Chicago. I did a lot of stuff once upon a time in Chicago. But when I moved to Atlanta, I went the traditional route. I interned at a studio, a place called Silent Sound, which is no longer up and running, but it was a really big deal at the time. And I worked my way up as a intern to an assistant. I got an opportunity from there to work with Tricky Stewart, the producer, as his assistant. Then I worked my way up to be his engineer. And that's when I was, in the big leagues, so to speak, because I was just in the hot seat pretty much every day with a bunch of different pop artists and R&B artists and just really big people all the time. Um, I didn't necessarily learn from a mixer per se. I learned from producers, and if you do a lot of research, you'll see a lot of mixers came up under producers.
Hmm.
That was kind of a hand in hand thing, to the Teddy Rileys, to the Babyface, and those type of people. They all had engineers, and those engineers, a lot of them turned out to be mixers down the line. So that was my journey. But then there's a lot of mixers that came from mixers too.
Hmm.
Thankfully, with Tricky, his Rolodex is or his network is so wide that I came up and spent a lot of time with Jason when I was younger, um, and just a lot of great engineers, Dave Pensato, people like that. I was just exposed to a lot, and I just got to pick their brains throughout the years, and also just lose a lot of mixes to them over the years. At least 10 years of you know recording and stuff like that, and trying to beg to get the mix and be like, oh, let me mix this one. And I would try my best, and then they tell me to send the session to Jason or whoever, and their mix would be 5 dB louder than mine and better in every single way. And, it was humbling, but I got to have something to directly compare it to and figure out how to get better. And over time, that led to getting better.
That is so big. And it's one of the things I'm always trying to get our students to do in our coaching program. I do one-on-one coaching with people, and we have like a coaching community. And one of the big things is making sure you actually know what great records sound like in your style on your speakers. And then
Hmm.
you have to have that experience of like finding out what separates yours from the ones that are winning again and again, and just listening to what the actual differences are. Oh, I could have done that with a kick drum. I could have done that with a vocal. That's
Hmm.
allowed. Yeah, so big. So great to hear you say that. All
Yes.
right. Additional questions for you here. Well, this is a comment. Russ says the Motown had the best musicians, in my opinion. They created music from the ground up. Absolutely. After wants to chime in on our conversation about shortcuts, saying learning the shortcuts from my DAW changed my life. Yeah, highly
Oh, yeah,
recommended. Anything that can make you think less and just move faster
for
is great.
sure.
FL Friedman says he loves the soldiers on the front line analogy in regard to the use of plugins.
Oh,
Benj
that's
is
my
joining us.
guy.
Benj, good to
I've
have you
known him
here.
for a while.
Tanner's here. Tanner, good to have you. These guys are here for a lot of our live Q&As. After says, how much do you do translation checks? Things like car, phone, Bluetooth speakers, etc. And do you find it useful to use EQ profiles that emulate systems like those? So what are your thoughts on translation, using alternate systems, or even using EQ profiles to emulate other systems?
Yeah, so I think today most people, even mixers, I mean everybody, they have their own home studio or their own setup. So because of that, you may be constrained to just physical limitations. No matter how much treatment you put in a room, if you have 8-foot ceilings, it just
Mhm.
is what it is, right? You're gonna have nulls in your room and stuff like that. So, and you could put whatever speakers in there, whatever DSP. There's gonna be some type of blind spot, as I like to call it, in your room. So translation checks to me are important. Now I don't do quite as many as some people. I have some headphones that I like. Maybe I'll go on a walk and use it as a reason to, get out and walk and not just be a nerd and sit in a chair all
Mhm.
day. And I'll listen to the mixes or I'll listen to what I'm working on. And sometimes just removing yourself from the screen makes you listen in a different way. I don't know if it's like a
Mhm.
sensory deprivation thing, but you're not focused on what you can change. You're just focused on what it makes you feel. And sometimes that translation check is the best one you can have. And your car is important too, but a lot of times car is just like, okay, the bass
Mm.
is hitting like I thought. Cool, I could hear the vocals like I thought I could. Some of the other stuff gets lost in the sauce, especially if you turn it way up. So
Yeah, great answer. All right. Isomatic says grilled cheese is goated. Yeah, all right. I can see that.
facts.
Tanner says, uh, I got hacked. My card got switched out. I'll get plugged in back, Justin. I'm not sure what that's referring to, but Tanner, hope all is well with you. Baker says,
Well,
ooh, what are the top 3 pieces of advice you'd give for an upcoming audio engineer in 2025? Any thoughts there?
ooh, man, these guys came prepared. Top 3 pieces of advice for an audio engineer in 2025. First, I would say in any year, you need to find a North Star. Like, find someone that resonates with you the most and try to emulate that. Try to figure out as much as you can about them, study them to the T, and emulate it. And what you'll find in the end, if you do it correctly, you will get closer to being them and you'll realize you'll never be them, but you actually end up being you.
Hmm.
But chasing that North Star leads you back to yourself.
Hmm.
When I was 21, 22, 23, whatever, I wanted to be like Manny, Fabian, Serban, Jason, like all these people, because I was just fascinated by it. And anytime I was around them, like I just wanted to learn. And I felt like I emulated everything. Like, what is their mix bus? What is this? What is that? I had a playlist of everybody's records, all the way from like back to 1991, just so I could find the common thread. Like the production was different, the year was different, the genre was different, but what is the same thing? And that's their sound. I would study them to the team. Like, man, this person's mid-range game is crazy. This person's drum game is crazy. This person's whatever game is crazy. And in trying my best emulation of them, I never became them, but I found my own sound in the midst of that, of trying to emulate somebody else. And I think that's the essence of music in general, right? Like you have a Michael Jackson, but you wouldn't have that if you didn't have James Brown. You wouldn't have
Hmm.
certain people without other people. And they'll pay homage, but ultimately it's just a kid that was really inspired by somebody else at the core of it. So that's my first piece of advice. Find your North Star as soon as possible and follow that until you could break off and be yourself. Um, Secondly, get good with your money,
Hmm.
regardless of how you make your money. Like, music is more fun when you have money in your pocket. So, with that, I mean, like, if you have a job, if you do Uber or whatever, like, you're an entrepreneur, like it or not. You're an independent contractor. So, you have to find ways to make it make sense for you so you can do the thing you want to do. And that is super important, right? Like, make a business plan. If you want to get gear, whatever, like put 10% of every mix you make into getting new plugins or whatever. Like find a way to build it because nobody's going to promote you to be what you want to be. You have to strategically get there yourself. So the sooner you can recognize that, the better, I think. Um, Third, I would say find your why. And
Hmm.
it's easy to know what your why is when you're a kid or when you're younger,
Mm.
but really be solid in knowing why, because you're going to have to remind yourself of that as you get older in the business, because the business will go through different phases. There'll be high points where it just feels like opportunities are falling from the sky, and there'll be low points where it feels like your phone is broken because nobody's calling you.
Mm.
And if you can find a way to stay in touch with your why, that could be family, that could be just the love of music, that could be what it made you feel, it could be the rush of being on stage, whatever that why is, that's what's going to carry you through the tough times. So if you can always stay fixed in understanding what your why is, you can be in it for the long haul, in my opinion.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I also feel like, at least for me in my life, my why has changed over the years. There's been different whys that have kind of come and gone. And, every once in a while, I'll feel like, it's all so the same. Like I'm doing the same thing again and again. And then I'll do something slightly different. Like when I first started doing coaching calls with people, it just made me see music through a whole different lens.
Yeah,
And that was like, whoa, like listening to people and hearing what kind of problems they run into again and again. That was
yeah,
big. When I went from mixing to mastering and listening to music through a new lens and trying to become as good as the mastering engineers who I loved. That was a new
hmm,
why and a different why. And I imagine those whys
yeah,
can change. And like you said, family can be another why. And to a
yeah,
degree, it's tricky. The money thing. I like how you brought up money and how it is important. But one of the biggest exercises for me when I really started to make audio really work for me financially, I remember I read a book, Think and Grow Rich. And one of the
oh yeah,
exercises, just like in the first chapter, there's one exercise where it's like, write down how much you made in from each source, and then write down how much you want to make and how you're going to make it. And just that
yeah,
exercise of putting pen to paper and sitting down and being like, okay, I need to make or want to make X. What services can I do? What things could I do? This number of mixes, this number of live sound dates, or if you have an
yeah,
additional job, this number of Uber rides, whatever it is, writing that stuff down and then having a plan, like creating a plan just and not I didn't even need to come back to it again and again. I just need to go through the exercise, like get that in my mind, make it a
yeah,
focus, and it changed things for months and months going forward. And then coming
yeah,
back to that kind of exercise every once in a while, so huge. And then that being a potential jumping off point. And after a while, once you get good at some of the money can become a why. Every once in a while, when I've gotten bored of music, but I've gotten really into jujitsu or archery, I'm like, well,
yeah,
if I do an extra record, then I can buy this new bow that I wanted. So I get into these
yeah,
other things that music then fuels those hobbies. And then something happens in music that gets my why on fire again for music directly again. So I feel like
yeah.
there's
And
always an
that's
ebb and flow in that, but you got to find them again and again. Yeah.
yeah. And the why, I mean, to your point, the why isn't just going to be this fixed thing from when you're like 14 to when you're 90. The why
Right.
will change, but as long as you're aware of the why, I think
Hmm.
that's what's most important. Like life gets infinitely more complicated as you get older, and the music becomes a lifestyle more than just a thing to do. So it's like when you understand that why, and you understand the
Hmm.
money side, like nobody said you had to make $1 trillion, but it's more just like understanding that you do need to pay attention to it, because all of these things work hand in hand, and that all makes for better records because you can wholeheartedly put yourself into the song when it's in front of you, because
Yeah,
all this other stuff isn't bogging you down quite as much.
for sure. Love it. All right. Um, After says, absolutely love that answer. And Tanner says, got to stay in the hustle. That all this stuff is straight wisdom. Questions here. These two might go hand in hand, and one of them, the second question I may ask might be the answer to the first question. But Tyrone Marcel says, do you have any tips for mixing in apartments that aren't soundproof? That's one. And then the next question right after it from Sigland says, um, what's your take on working with headphones? So two questions for you. Tips for mixing in apartments that aren't
Wait, these are
soundproof.
two questions from the same person?
No, two different questions for two different people, but I feel like you're almost having a
Okay.
conversation with each other in there,
I was
right?
like, bro, your question is the answer.
Yeah,
Headphones.
right. I think the second question is the answer to the first guy's question. I think that would be the big thing is maybe
Yeah.
headphones is the answer for non-soundproof apartments. But I don't know if you
Man,
have more to
headphones.
say on that. But
Oh yeah. Headphones to me was like that was like the bike before I got a car. It was
mm,
like wherever I gotta go, I'm getting there. I don't care. Like
hmm
you could have you got the fancy Ferrari, like I'm happy for you, but I'm gonna get where I'm trying to go.
Yep.
So having headphones was like that to me, and specifically it was Sennheiser HD 800Ss, and at the time it was a splurge. I think I got them like used on eBay for like $800 or something, or
Hmm.
900. And my friend Maddox Chim, it's a
Oh
good
yeah,
friend of
yeah.
mine.
Hmm.
He had them, and it's just big ugly cans that were super light, but just looked so dumb.
Hmm.
But I listened to it, and I'm like, these just sound flat. These just sound like
Hmm.
the flattest, most boring NS10 things. But then I actually started mixing on them, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. And that pretty much afforded me everything else down the line, because I was on those for years, at least 2 years, when I was in between studios. Or you know how it goes. Like when you're first starting out, you may be at this one studio, but then they don't have sessions as much. So now you're back at home, or you're at a friend's studio, but then they started getting busy, so you can't go in there as much. Like life happens, especially in your mid 20s. Like it's rough. So you need a common thing, a common source to know this sounds good. So
Hmm.
headphones has always been that. I in at every level. Like you can be in between rooms. Like maybe you end up moving to a different part of New York, or a different. You move to LA. It's like you're not going to know your room anytime soon, even if you put the best
Hmm.
gear in. Day one, you're not going to be able to do a mix and turn it around and send it to Beyonce.
Hmm.
So what do you have? You have your old trusty headphones. I got a pair of them somewhere around here still. Like I
Yeah.
trust those. Like I trust my best friend or something. You know.
Beautiful. Dig it. All right. Benj asks, question: are there any criteria that you would turn down a mix project because of, and what kind of reason would that be?
Okay, that's a good question. I have a rule that I tell my assistants, Eric and Nick, and it's something me and my wife talked about years ago, because my wife used to master, actually, believe it or not.
Hmm.
Um, there's a triangle. It's good money, good music, good people.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have two of those three in the situation, you should
Mm-hmm.
probably stay away, or at
Mm-hmm.
least really consider why you're doing it. And by good money, I don't mean they're paying you $1 million. I mean good money for whatever stage of your career you're at, right? If you were currently making 50, if somebody tells you $100, that's good money at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's good money. Good people, as in like, is this somebody, if they wanted to start a band and we were all 15 years old or something in a garage, would I care to be in this band? Do I want to be
Mm-hmm.
in this room with the person for 8 hours straight? You know, do I want to, can I deal with them? And then obviously good music. Like, do I like the music? Does this music speak to me? If you get at least two of those three, you should consider it. If
Right.
you don't have at least two of those three, if it's only one of the three, if the music is good, but the person calls and you're like, oh my God, this guy again, or the
Yeah.
money, you feel a little resentful because you feel like you're giving more than you're getting back. Okay, then not even just for your sake, maybe for their sake, it's best that you really consider why you're doing it, because you might not even do your best work if you already feel resentful because you don't feel like you're getting paid what you'd like in
Yeah.
that situation. So yeah, that triangle really, I try to stick by that to this day. At
That's
least two out
beautiful.
of those
I
three
I can
things.
relate to that so much, and I think you've described it better than I've heard anyone describe it. And it's making me think of what are the three scenarios where you only have one. And I've had all three of those scenarios. Um, Possibly one of the most dangerous ones that keep people in something for too long is that there's really good music and they really respect and believe in the music, but the person is such trash to deal with and it's paying next to nothing. And that one can be
Hmm.
addictive because you're like, no, no, I have to stick this out. I have to make this work because maybe this could be
Yep.
my way forward. But it's
Yep.
just so miserable and it's not sustainable because there's no money. And just because they're
Yep.
talented doesn't mean anything's going to come of it. So that's one
Yep.
way it can be wrong, that there's only good music. Number two, another really dangerous one is there's only good money and there's really good money, but my goodness, this person is a jerk to deal with and the music's garbage, but at least I'm getting paid. And that
Hmm.
one is dangerous because it really lulls you into this comfort, but this comfort that will just wreck you. And make you sour from the inside out. And that's one of the best ways to become resentful. And then the
Yep.
third one, I think, is the least likely to happen, where they're just really good, nice people, but you don't like the music and there isn't enough money. That's the one that's the least dangerous because you're the most
Yeah.
likely to be like, hey, let's go hang out sometime, but we're just not working on projects together and we can be friends. That's cool. But,
Exactly.
that's that. And that one is
Those are the
probably the
ones
least
that you end
dangerous.
up just talking. You just the whole
Yeah.
session is just talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no music
Right.
being made.
But
Yeah.
maybe that one could be dangerous to you too if you have real career aspirations and you end up only working with people just because you like them and that's so comfortable for you that it could diminish your ambition and keep you from working with people who might be a little more of a stretch. Okay, this person's a little bit more difficult, but they're really talented and the whole world can see that they're talented and I'm getting compensated properly for it and that's a stretch for me. Or you find the other two, in some other way that maybe if you just have nice people you like being around, that could be a slow, quiet killer where you don't realize you're getting killed
Mhm.
because you're happy along the way, but you never
Yep.
become what you could become because you never stretch yourself. So maybe
Yep.
that's a hidden danger that I'm just acknowledging now in my life. Maybe I've fallen into that hidden danger too. So yeah, fascinating.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
beautiful way to think about it. All right. A little further on here, we've taken up 40 minutes of your time. This has been so generous of you to spend so much time with us doing this masterclass.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. We just have a couple more live questions coming in. If you don't mind going through just a couple
For
more, do you have a
sure.
few more? Great.
Yep.
All right. So Lucas says, thank you so much for answering the headphone question. I'm a hobbyist musician and I mix and produce using the ATH-20 MX. LOL. I love them. That's great to love your source. Honestly, in my opinion,
Yep.
one of the most important things is knowing your monitoring system inside and out. Andrew Sheps recently switched to some of my favorite headphones. These things are, mine are $1,800. His are around, similar price. You're talking about some $900 headphones, but you're better off with a pair of $90 headphones that you know inside and out than a $1,900
Mhm.
pair of headphones that you don't. That said, it's usually easier to learn a $1,900 pair. As your taste develop, you may want to upgrade still from there, as good as the Audio Technica stuff is. And we have some videos here on
Yep.
this channel that will get you through that. Lan says, thank you for the response. I love it. Tanner says, Odyssey is my new truth. Great to hear, Tanner. I'm a big fan of him as well.
Yeah, they're great.
Full of Soul Music says, do you have a mix you're most proud of? And if you had to save it and didn't want to call anybody out, just tell us what you did to make it memorable to you. So that's maybe two separate questions. Do you have a favorite mix that you've done, maybe because it turned out the best? Or potentially, and if you don't want to name this one by name, do you have a mix that you're the most proud of that you did the most to it, like that you had the biggest impact on it, where it wasn't like this master class where it was just polishing things around the edges, but you said, ooh, I don't know how that's going to wind up. And then you felt like you really breathed new life into it that made it work. Do you have any
Yeah.
examples of either something that A, you're just proud of, period, because you love how it turned out, or B, that you're proud of how far you could take it from where it started, whether or not you want to call out names on that second one?
I would say what I'm most proud of, it would probably be Afrobeat stuff like Omalay stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because some songs needed next to nothing, some songs needed a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, especially, this was 20 when I first started working on that stuff. It was a genre I didn't know anything about. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
knew the essence of it, but I
Yep.
couldn't tell you 3 or 4 or 5 artists. Um, they they came to me, and I was very fortunate to get that call, and it was actually a blessing in disguise because it was a blank page. There was no, here in the States, somebody gives you a hip hop record, there's always a point of reference. Somebody gives you an R&B record, there's always a point of reference. Even if it's unspoken, their their taste, their palate is already predetermined, right? Maybe they grew up off Brandy or Mariah, or maybe they want something more like Sierra or whatever, like or Beyonce. Like everybody has their thing that they consider the gold standard. But Afrobeats didn't exist. It did, just in a different way. But the Afrobeats that we know now, it was kind of in its infancy. So I, all I did was create from the soul. Like if it felt good, if it was some percussion thing that I didn't even know the name of, it's like, well, I want to turn this up because it makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. And we took a lot of risks, a lot of bold moves. I added a crap ton of bass to some songs
Mm-hmm.
because I just like it. And I grew up with subs in my trunk when I was younger. So I like bass. I didn't know if it was appropriate for the genre, and I didn't care because
Mm,
I didn't have a point of reference. There was never that thought in the back of my mind, like, oh, that's not traditional R&B. Like that's not just like we had the conversation at the beginning of this of convex versus concave, and typically
mhm,
hip hop is more down the middle. There were no rules. I was panning stuff. I was doing all types of wild stuff. The mixes are super wide to the point where they almost give you a headache at this point. Like, but it felt good. It felt good and it worked and it was very, very impactful. And for an entire country of people and beyond, it it meant something to them. And to this day,
mm,
people text me or call me or DM me and say that uh, project, that Boy Alone project, really helped get them through something in their
mm.
life. So to me, that by far is the most rewarding because that's what I probably wanted to have feel or wanted to feel when I was a teenager or whatever. So to be able to give that or help create that experience for somebody else means a lot.
Beautiful. Yeah. Tanner writes in to say, I love Afrobeat. It's like reggae and hip hop and R&B all together. It's dope. He says he's married to an island woman, so he naturally loves the rhythm.
Nice.
Uh,
Did
yeah, that's the second best thing to being married to an Italian chef who's also a mastering engineer, from what I understand, where you guys will
Yeah,
have to
man.
duke that one out. All right, this is
Yeah.
probably going to be our last question. Um, from Baker, who says, what is the best marketing strategy for someone starting? Everyone thinks of analog gear in amateur spheres. So I guess he's asking this from the perspective of someone trying to market themselves as a mixer, producer, engineer, that kind of thing. Um, Here's a question for you. Maybe I'll piggyback on his question, add to it. He's saying, what's the best way of marketing yourself? You talked about your strategy when you got started. You were interning at some studios, and there you made connections with producers at those studios, becoming their engineer, and then eventually, finally winning some mix work from those same spheres you were working in. Is that the way that you think you would start today? Is there a different way in for someone who has your aspirations today? Or do you think that is still a great route for people to go today? Any thoughts on marketing yourself, whether it's independent of that, or whether going up through a system like that is still the way you'd approach it today, or if it would be different if you were 20 now as opposed to 20 back when you were?
Yeah. So I got to preface my comment by saying, or my answer by saying, I had 2 points of entry to
Mm,
to the
mhm,
game. That was my point of entry on the inside, but on the outside, I was doing sessions everywhere you can think of. Like, and even before I lived in Atlanta, it was in Chicago, and I lived in LA for a little bit too. I was always trying to work, always. And I've been in nice studios, home studios, bedroom studios, studios where people walk in and lay down their pistol. Like that's just a part of it. And the best marketing is your reputation and the experience you give people. Um, Good work gets you more work.
mhm,
And to not make it too complex, just look at it like any other hand to hand service, like a barber. Like, how does a barber get more work?
mm,
Well, everybody's hair you cut is a walking billboard, kind of.
right?
That's a good way to get more work. But also just being a cool person, being a laid back person, like work on your soft skills too. Your soft skills will get you in rooms that your actual skills can't yet.
Mm,
So when you're an intern, nobody's asking for your opinion. Nobody's asking for you to be, hey man, you think you can mix this? Like nobody cares. But whatever task you are assigned, if you show the energy of it's important, people
mhm,
see that and people recognize that. And that is marketing because
mm,
everybody in that room, even if they don't realize that, they trust you because they trusted you with the coffee and they trusted you with the other thing. They trusted you with the garbage. Every task they gave you, you did that and then some. You grew it, right? Like just treat everything as if they're paying you 10 times more than you're paying you to do it.
mm,
That's how you grow what you're doing. If you live in Oklahoma, okay, everybody you do a session with, make it seem pretend like they're giving you $1 million. What does that look like? Does that mean you going buy some Yankee candles or something and make sure the room smells good. Make sure the room is clean. Make sure the session runs smooth. Make sure that you have a backup of the session. You give them a rough that's on time but sounds good. Like treat it as if Beyonce is showing up to your studio every day. And before you know it, she might actually be showing up because you treated every client like that was the case. And that became word of mouth that for whatever your price point is, like you're by far the best call.
Mhm.
And that's how you grow and grow and grow and grow. If you want to get into the conversation of social media wise, the same thing really. Like you don't have to like focus on the substance. Like you
Mm.
can do all types of advertising and stuff like that. That's cool, but what are you really selling? Like make sure the experience is top notch, make sure the product is top notch, and it'll really start to sell itself. Like you don't really see Ferrari commercials, but we all know about Ferraris
Hmm.
and they don't go on sale.
Right.
But,
All right. Be the
we all
Ferrari.
want one. Yeah. So
I dig
that's
it.
my spiel.
All right, I've got to take this one from David Rotimi because he writes in, I think maybe he's talking about an artist you've worked with. So he says, Clarity of Mind up next. Can't wait to see what y'all cooked. Love Boy Alone. Are these referencing specific records that you might be familiar with?
Oh yeah, that's Omale. And yeah, we are wrapping up. So this
Hmm.
this one it's a special one. So I'm excited. I'm super excited actually.
All right, so David Rotimi has a specific question about Oma. He says, how do you deal with poorly recorded vocals from Oma, if any?
Early on some of them were just because he was recording himself and he'd be on tour or wherever inspiration strikes. So it was less on him and more just if he was inspired on the tour bus, he was inspired on the tour bus, and whatever mic was on the bus, that's the mic we're using. Um, so that was the thing at the time. Right now, it's not really a thing. I think most stuff recently has been on a C800,
Hmm.
which some people have their opinions about that mic. Um,
It is
but with the
definitely a
poorly
different world
recorded
from a
vocals,
USB mic on a tour bus.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's I think that's where you learn the fundamentals, man. Like you should really be thankful when you get poorly recorded stuff because that
Mm.
builds your skills on editing and fixing problems in a natural way. Like the best to me as a craftsman, if somebody had to come and fix a hole in the wall, the best job they can do is if I walk in and didn't know there was a hole to begin with.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
if you can learn how to do that with poorly recorded stuff to the point where somebody presses play and they couldn't tell that there was some baby crying in the background originally, that's a
Yeah.
good sign. That's a good engineer right there.
Right. One
Um,
tool that you flashed on screen in that you didn't use on this particular session was the Waves Clarity VX, which as soon as I heard the idea of being on a tour bus, maybe no acoustic treatment and kind of weird mic, that would be something that would spring to mind that can both remove, like it can kind of de-reverb things as well as de-noise things and de-background noise things. So I think that's one tool, but that's, one of many.
yep,
Clarity VX is a tool in that class. There's other things. There's a Isotope RX voice denoise and there's
yep,
gates, and then there's for me sometimes multi-band compression. I'll say that on your masterclass, the audio we got from our videographer is not a videographer we've used a bunch. He hid Prizzie's mic under his shirt, and it was super duper
classic.
muffled, and it sounded awful. And my editor sent this back to me. He's like, Justin, I don't know what we're gonna do with this audio. We're like on an audio guide channel. It sounds terrible. What we're gonna do is I'm like, all right, give it to me. And I got the audio, and I did some heavy-handed processing to it, and then took the heavy-handed processing, and then ran it through an AI that cleaned it up further, and then mix those two things back together. And it was an extra, amount of work, but I think anyone listening to your masterclass, they're going to be like, the audio sounded great, and they'll have no idea
Mhm.
about the nightmares. Tell me, for
Exactly.
anyone who's gotten this far and watched the masterclass, if that's the case, if the audio sounded good to you, and if you would have ever guessed that it just sounded when I got it, because it was bad. But yeah, there's tricks. Sometimes you got to use them.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
All right. Baker says, thank you for your deep answers. David says, thank you for answering. A lot of people have been so
sure.
excited to have you here, and I am one of them. I want to say big thanks to you and big thanks to the artist as well. Can you shout her out and the name of the track one more time so people go check her out?
Yeah, so that was Jade Nova. I think the
Yeah.
song was Safe Space, and I think
I
it
think
actually
this one was 90s,
90's fine. Okay, yep,
90s fine. That's it.
that one might be out already, but she's coming out with
Yes,
another one called Safe Space
I did
on
find it on the
Friday.
YouTubes.
Yep, yep.
All
So
right.
yeah,
Check out
man,
Jade
super dope
Nova.
artist.
Check out Prizzie. Follow him on all the social medias. Check out his website. Also, big one last shout out and thanks to Waves. These guys have been making some of the best plugins in the pro audio world since there's been such a thing as DAWs and digital audio. You just go
Yep.
and check out their plugins. I mean, so many of these plugins are ones that people use again and again and again. If it was me and I was telling you what to, oh, here's the L4 Ultra Maximizer that you were talking about. Yes, I was thinking of the L3, I think, when I was thinking of the multiband thing. This is their
Oh, yeah.
latest version of the
The
L2
latest
style
and
limiter
greatest.
single band just came out. I got my mind totally boggled. Curves AQ, this is a really cool one, intelligent EQ. Their Curves Equator is really cool. It's that kind of resonance suppressor kind of idea. But I love the bundles. You could get Renaissance Vox for $50, which you used all over the place. But me,
Oh yeah.
man, some of the bundles, I would say my two favorite bundles, if I was going for a smaller bundle, would be probably the Renaissance bundle, where you get all those Renaissance plugins, the compressor, the EQ, the de-esser. You saw Prizzie use all of these. And the other big one for me would be the CLA classic compressors that have, I think, some of the best models of the, LA2A 1176.
Yep.
There's a LA3A, which not everybody's aware of, and so many different flavors of LA of the 1176 that all have a different flavor. I think they're some of the best models ever. So
Yep.
those are some of my votes. There's so many other cool stuff that you could check out. Also remember to go to mix-con.com. That's mix-con.com, where you can RSVP for more of the presentations that are coming up and sign up for the MixCon mega giveaway. We are giving away more than $10,000 worth of free gear, including Waves plugins and headphones and speakers and a whole bunch of great stuff. Check it out at mix-con.com. Thank you again so much, Prizzie, for being here and for doing the masterclass for us.
For sure, man. Thanks for having me, and thanks everybody with the questions. Really good questions. If you have any more, just DM me. If I see it, I'm happy to shed some light on whatever.
Sweet. All right, Prizzie, thank you again. Thanks again to Waves for making this free to the public. Thanks to Jade Nova for letting us go under the hood of her track. And thank you for hanging out with us. This has been Justin Colletti of SonicScoop with Preston Prizzie Ried. See you next
Peace.
time.